We're recording, and everybody, I think we'll mute you if that's okay. Nobody be insulted. Um, Welcome to our interview and presentation with Jan Leipz. We're going to look at his most interesting life and career, and I think you'll be stirred by it. This program is part of a continuing series that's hosted by Kehilat Hanahar, the little shul by the river, and it's part of the adult education program, very ably led by Abraham Liebson and Jerry Bogart. So we really appreciate being able to participate. And again, this is one of a series of arts-focused presentations that I've been involved in. And I have the great pleasure of introducing to everyone Jan Leipz. This cover photo that you're looking at was Jan painting in 1991, which was a very pivotal year, which we'll get into. And next to Jan is his wife, Janet. And Jan really can speak for himself, but for him, Janet has been a rock and a key player in his life, both as a partner in life and also somebody that has really assisted him, particularly in the years of his infirmity. So with this presentation, we're going to, the first part, talk about Jan's growing up, childhood, and passage through a number of iterations. The second half is going to be really focused on his art. Can you stop the share? So now, does everybody see the two of us on the large screen, or are we little? Yeah, we're good? Okay. So everybody, this is Jan Leipz. We are in his atelier here. Behind us, you can see some of his work, which is a lot of his most recent work, which are portraits, which we'll talk about. But um, I'll start by saying that Jan and I met in 1984. The circumstance of our meeting was that I had fallen out of a canoe and cut my leg pretty seriously, bleeding copiously, and drove to Doylestown Hospital, the emergency section, and none other than Dr. Leipz took care of my leg and stopped the bleeding. And that was how we met. And although I was aware of Jan mostly because we're members of the same Bucks County world, we didn't really connect again, I would say, until quite a number of years later. Is that right? And mostly we connected when I became aware of his artistry, that at a certain point that I had lost track of, he was no longer a doctor and he was a celebrated artist. And that's what we're going to talk about, this extraordinary transition from one life and career to another. Next.
Share.
Oh, share.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, and next. There. Okay, so
Didn't get to speak later.
what's that?
Sure.
I did talk about Janet. Did I not say enough?
Am I?
Oh, yes. Jan most appropriately wants to talk about Janet, please.
I simply want to say I use the biblical phrase that she's my rod and staff, and has been my rod and staff for most of my life. When I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, My wife didn't turn around the way many people do and walk away. She said, okay, what do we do? What are we having for dinner? I'm trying to indicate to you that she was extremely accepting of a rather significant adversity in our lives, but she is a true and blue. She's a trooper. She didn't blink an eyelash. She never hesitated in terms of staying with me, even though she was facing a life of somebody with multiple sclerosis, which can be not so good or not so bad, or depending on the course that the disease takes. But the only other thing I have to say about Janet, and apart from the acceptance of my illness, is I will discuss later how I became a painter, and Janet was part of that, very big part of that. And I simply want to emphasize that Janet, in the early years of my painting, when I primarily painted plein air and open air, Janet would carry all of my equipment. Wherever we ended up on the Delaware River pathway or in the woods somewhere up in up country, God knows where, by the Frankenfield Bridge. I don't even remember where that is anymore. But we were up in the country, and Janet carried all of my art supplies, easel, paints, blah, blah, blah. No matter how long the trek to get to the spot I wanted to paint. And so I'm telling you, this is one of the reasons I call her my rod and staff, because I do not believe that my art career could have progressed as it did without this fantastic woman's assistance. So I love her.
That's great. And I would just add,
Don't make me cry.
yeah, no crying, not yet. There's a few moments you can cry later. I would just add that Jan and Janet have also been travelers and extraordinary travelers, particularly back and forth to France. And Janet too has done all the, carrying and schlepping and arranging. And so anyway, she's been a trooper, and we love her.
To add to David's comments, you may not realize it, but I am in a wheelchair and don't have the use of my right arm. So I basically have one arm and have had one arm performing for three limbs for many, many, many years. Therefore, Janet had to carry adaptive equipment, handicapped equipment with me when we went to France for 10 years. And I don't know too many, I don't know too many of the people who would have been willing to do that. I'm not so sure I would have been willing to do that, but she did. And it was magnificent. And I, again, owe her my life.
Okay, well, great. And it's amazing. And there are so many in the world that have those unsung jobs as caregivers. And it's a hard job, and she's been amazing. Okay, here we are. Jan is born in 1951, right? And in the Bronx. And is this where you grew up?
Yes, I grew up in the Bronx and proud of it. I love the Bronx. There are actually beautiful places in the Bronx that I know about, but nobody else would believe that. But there are beautiful places in the Bronx. At any rate, as I was growing up, I was not an athletic, I could have been, but I didn't end up as an athletic child. I did not play sports. I did not play ball with the kids, football, etc., etc. What I did when I was very young, I would get on my bicycle with a backpack with some art supplies in my backpack, and I would drive around the Bronx looking for things that interested me that I might want to sketch. And so I would then stop my bicycle when I came upon such a scene, and I would sit down for a few hours and I would sketch. And this is pretty much what I did for the most part when I was a kid growing up. Um,
And continued, right?
it-
All the time.
pardon me?
And continued sketching.
Yes, I continued sketching, and in fact, one day my mother showed up with all of my school books from grade school up to high school, and I put them away, and I said, "Thanks, Mom. Plenty of storage here with all of my other junk." So I put the stuff away and I didn't look at it, but I looked at it later. And when I looked at it later, I was astonished because the words were hidden behind doodles. My books in school were completely full of doodles and sketches.
And we're going to see a good one in a moment. Okay, so next,
So, okay,
look at this cute little
shall
kid.
shall I show you shall we go to the first?
The doodle, or wait, let's first talk about your family.
Okay.
Okay.
My
This
family,
is this your Rodin type like pose there? The thinker at an early age. You're about 3 there. So cute.
I absolutely have no conception of what was going through my head. Trying to figure out the world, maybe. I don't know.
And your family,
Family's on the right,
yeah.
and there I am in my little jacket and tie, and that's my mother and my older brother who's 5 years older than me, and to my right, my old man.
Now, talk about this room. It looks like this is a painted background.
Yes, actually, yeah, you're correct, David. The painting, there's a mural on the wall, and who did it? My father. It was done in tempera paint on the wall, and my father was a would-be artist. He attempted to be a commercial artist as a young man, schlepping around a big heavy suitcase with some of his art samples in it from one place to another, and was always told, very nice, don't call us, we'll call you. And so the career did not work out as a commercial artist, and he considered it a failure. He then became an optician's trainee. And this was the old days when you didn't go to school for that sort of thing. So he worked on in Lower Manhattan in a bunch of sweatshops, learning the business from the bottom up. And he became a successful optician on Lexington Avenue and 62nd Street for many years. And he did well.
So, what kind of family life? First of all, it's a Jewish home, right? You're raised Jewish, correct?
No, unfortunately,
No.
unfortunately, not an accurate statement. I am born Jewish. My mother was Jewish. My father was Jewish. My brother was Jewish. My grandparents, all my relatives were Jewish. People you see behind me, a lot of them lived in Vienna at the turn of the century. And
And you were bar mitzvahed.
that's another story. I had no Jewish indoctrination. We didn't even know what Shabbos was. We had no clue about anything about Judaism, and that applied to my entire family. However, when I reached the incredible mature age of 13, and they decided I should be bar mitzvahed. Why did they decide that? That's up to you to figure out. Was it to conform to what all the other Jewish families would do? I suspect yes, but I don't know. At any rate, I was bar mitzvahed and I entered a shul for one of the very first times in my life at 13. My parents had hired a little Hasidic rabbi from Lower Manhattan who used to schlep his material up to my apartment in the Bronx, and he taught me my Haftorah. And I think he did it in record time. I don't know if it was 3 months. Don't forget, I knew nothing. I knew nothing. And he taught me the Haftorah, and I did deliver the Haftorah at this Hasidic temple that I, I don't know where the heck it came from. I don't know how my parents found out about it, but I did deliver my Haftorah there. And when I was finished, I was hit with a hailstorm of little pebbles. And I thought, oh my goodness, I must have done a horrible job.
These were-
People are throwing rocks at me. As it turned out, the custom in that Hasidic temple was to throw candy at the person who had just finished their Haftorah, and that's what they did. So it wasn't a complete rejection, but it shocked me until I found out what was really happening.
So we're
So,
gonna-
so to answer your question, we were not raised in Judaism. The Judaism that I have learned about and the aspects of it that I have come to admire and respect deeply came when I became more of an adult. I am still not a devout follower of Jewish custom at all. I am an atheist. I became an atheist when I was about 20 and started reading international literature, which opened my eyes to a whole bunch of other different things. But I was not raised Jewish, and my family was not a Jewish family per se. And unfortunately, that's an aspect of life that maybe in the future might be changed.
Yeah, I wonder if you've ever reflected on your Jewish identity, however obscured by a lack of practice and your heritage of, generations before, if that affected your artistry in any way, or just independent.
I don't think so. I think when I became an atheist in my college years, and still am, I was actually proud of that, and there are reasons for that I could explicate to you if we had the time. But I believe atheism was definitely the thing that fit me best, and my artwork, which followed years later, has no bearing whatsoever on any religious aspects, at least as far as I can determine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's continue in the early years. Next, Sharon.
Yeah, next, this is I hope they can see the whole screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, this is a doodle. I think did I mention that I didn't do sports and all of that?
Correct.
Yes, okay. So
This is what you were doing.
at school, in addition to doing this at home, I continued my irresponsible, irreverent, and obnoxious behavior in school by constantly doodling and drawing. And frankly, I don't know how I learned anything, because if you looked at my school pages, the writing is you can't really see that as well as the doodles. In this picture, you'll see an early feeling I had. I should mention to you, well, I did mention that I did a tremendous amount of sketching when I was a kid. And this, which was done in 1966,
You were 15.
I was in middle school, indicates my early but unconscious unhappiness with the fact that instead of images of beautiful paintings and stories about artists and humanity type subjects, I was consuming mathematical, scientific data, and it just filled my head, but it was not a real pleasant experience for me. And so I feel here I kind of indicate how unpleasant it was for me to have to imbibe all of this stuff, which I wasn't so sure I really was most interested in. Obviously, it was art.
So then you were on your way to Bronx High School, School of Science,
Yes, that's
which
correct, David.
was, you had to qualify for that?
Yes, I had to qualify for that, and there was an enriched program. It's one of the few specialty schools in New York City, at least up until this point in time. Who knows what's going to happen now? But at that school, it was famous for scientific achievement. There were a number of Nobel Prize winners and mathematical expertise. Uh, what was my favorite class and the one that did the most in terms of changing my life? A literature class. I had one teacher, and he introduced me to foreign literature. And when I started to read international literature, my whole world opened up. So for me, the Bronx High School of Science, maybe one could say was wasted in terms of the science application, but in terms of opening up to humanities and what art could do, and literature specifically, my mind was blown, and I really benefited what we hope kids get out of education, which was expansion of my mind to new fields and new endeavors.
So that sort of led to the curious. So then you went to CCNY, where my father went, and also produced a huge number of Nobel Prize winners, many of whom were poor Jewish kids that got a free education at CCNY. But you did pre-med and literature.
What
So-
today might be called a double major, but in those days, we didn't have such
So
thing.
why pre-med?
It's pre-med, and it was literature, actually a major in literature, and my second was pre-med.
Yeah.
So I did all the pre-med work in case I wanted to go to medical school after college. I was prepared, I had everything done. But during that time, art didn't die. This image is not going to.
Yeah, that's coming in. Yeah, next image.
It's up.
It's up.
That dinner is it not sharing?
No.
Did we lose the share? Hold on. Lost the share.
It's
Sorry.
not critically important.
Well, keep talking and we'll get it up there quickly.
Okay, we could move on to this.
Well,
the
I
change.
mean, so you finished CCNY and
I finished CCNY, and you can already see that my personality was pulled in two different directions. It was an extremely difficult time of life for me, trying to decide, do I want to go to the arts or do I want to go to the sciences? Could not decide, and really, I mean, suffering may sound like a strong word, but mentally I was in anguish because I could not decide which pathway to follow. So what I did do after City College was to take a trainee job as a respiratory therapist in a major New York hospital. And by doing that, I spent a year doing that. I learned a few things, but the thing that I learned the most was I used to see all these guys running around in white pants with beepers, getting beeped all the time for medical emergencies. And I thought to myself, wow, how exciting that is. And that kind of really leaned me towards deciding let me attempt medical school because I want to be like one of these guys. So I then went on to the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, also in the Bronx, believe it or not. And I did that in 3 years instead of 4. And so that was pretty much the end of my academic education, but then went on to a residency for 3 years.
So we're having some technical difficulties here with the other images, and I'm wondering if we can improvise by holding up. You have all the images.
I asked Jerry, I'm not she has to give me the host again, because my internet went, and so,
She's not available.
and I just.
Do you have the all the shots that we did? Because I'm gonna just hold it up. Not on there. The other screenshots that of the PowerPoint. Oh.
I don't have your PowerPoint presentation.
Maybe that might be getting in here.
Okay, so hold on.
Just keep,
We're gonna figure this out.
won't let me in.
Let's see if I can get.
Perhaps this is sufficient.
Yeah. Well, it's
Won't even let me in. I can't get in.
okay. So I'm trying to think of where. Let's go offline and we'll just show each of them. I'll hold it up.
Okay. Let's get to the full view.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to talk.
Okay, so what we're going to show you next, so that we're not delayed too much, is a painting, an amazing painting, Dinner at My House, that Jan did when he was 22. He's graduated from school at this point. Oh, here. Okay. So we're going to try to do this in order, in a very unusual way. But can everybody see that?
No, you have to lift it up. Yes.
Is that,
Can you expand it a little bit?
it's big.
It's the slide.
Is that visible? Can we yes? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
All right, this
so Jan, yeah, talk a little bit about this image.
this crazy commotion might remind you of a scene in the Woody Allen movie where he was having dinner with his family. This was a pen and ink, color pen and ink drawing of dinner at my house. And you can't see the detail in this manner. Unfortunately, I can't enlarge it. However, the point is, I was becoming more sophisticated, and all of this stuff came out of my head. I did not use anything, I did not use any reference from reality in order to do this type of drawing. It just came.
So this drawing, isn't this what you submitted to Pratt?
No.
Huh.
Oh, yes. This one I submitted to Pratt Institute, which I was admitted to. However, they would not give me a scholarship, and my father would not assist me, and I did not have the chutzpah that some young artists have had in the past to just disagree with their fathers and their families and not become lawyers or accountants or insurance clerks and go on and do art. I just didn't have the wherewithal at that point in time in my life.
Well, this is also after finishing medical school, and going to Pratt would have been a little bit of a change of pace.
Well,
No?
this was actually finishing City College.
Oh, okay. This is before medical school.
Yes.
So you're still trying to decide what you want to do.
Right.
Okay. So
Yeah, try it again. Why don't you? let me try it. Let me see if I can,
You sure? Because
if you're working.
I'm on a
okay.
roll here.
Okay, good.
So how do I get the
Just
next?
hit the center button.
Okay. So this is, you did this, let's see, in 1980.
1980.
Yeah, so you've finished medical school at Albert Einstein. You've done your residency. The year before this, you have your first attack of MS, or your first inkling that something is wrong before diagnosis, right?
Well, I had definite neurologic deficits at that time from my first attack. Yes.
And so what happened? Was this shocking to you? Did you, how did you feel about that?
I ignored it.
You ignored it.
I ignored it and I wasn't interested. Now to tell you something, I'm not interested in illness. Strange for a physician to say, right? But I'm not interested in my own illness. I do what I have to do. I think I've always been pretty active with it, but I don't want to think about it. I deny it in my head, and I go about my business just trying to live my life as fully as possible. The image that David is attempting to show you, which I'm so sorry, but you can't see any of the detail of it. But this image is probably the ultimate image I did with my right hand. And it shows the extraordinary, I think, facility that I had with my right dominant hand. These are very minute pen and ink drawings. And this piece is maybe 20 by 24, or something of that size. But each of the elements within it, which you can't see.
And do you get a pretty good picture of this image? Everybody, somebody indicate yes, no? Okay. I think that not perfect, but we're making do. I think the thing that's interesting is this is the year 1980 that you were 1 year in private practice, right?
Yes.
So, and from what you've indicated, it was a trying year for you. You were extremely busy, and this work seems to me to reflect some of the turmoil you were experiencing.
Well, that's an interesting observation, which I actually never connected, but it was the
Because
year.
people are being cooked in here.
Pardon me?
I mean, it looks like people and things are being hung over a flame.
Yes, I'm being hung up and I'm being cooked and I'm being,
Yeah, so there are issues here.
yes.
So what was going on?
Well, I was in private practice for a year after my residency, and I found it totally boring and uninteresting. I couldn't stand doing school physicals one after another. It was ridiculous. So I decided to take extra training in emergency medicine, which I did with Kenneth Swan in Newark. And then I became an emergency physician. And once again, my rod and staff stepped into the picture. And by the way, this drawing was done during the midst of my angst of not being able to handle this situation I was in. But at any rate, my wife stepped in and she found a small advertisement in some paper somewhere for a job in an emergency room in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And I took that job. And I did that for 13 years or so. And the photograph that I wanted to show you next is a demonstration how
Oh, we don't have it.
This was the Staten Island ferry.
I know, but we don't have that photo.
Oh, you don't?
No, no. But you should talk about, so this is where we go. This is when you're in private practice on the right, delivering a baby. And sorry about the missing photograph, but I think what's interesting, you told me when you had MS, and especially after the diagnosis, you started developing your photography, and maybe you started sooner, and you started taking part-time jobs with the anticipation that you might not be able to continue your practice?
Yes, that's correct, David. In 1983, when I finally got my diagnosis after 4 years, today you go into an MRI and you have a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis in one day. I had to undergo 4 days of horrible testing down at Temple University to confirm the diagnosis, which I already knew I had. But at any rate, the diagnosis was confirmed. And the photograph we were going to show you, which is a black and white photograph, simply shows the fact that art would not go away. These photographs, I decided during my years in the emergency room as an emergency room physician, what you see the picture on the left, it's one of my first days in the ER handling a call for an EMT squad that was out on the road handling a road accident. And we used to give orders over the telephone to them as to what to do with the patient. But at any rate, the photograph I was going to show you is a black and white photograph. I couldn't stop doing art, even though I was crazed in this emergency room. So I built a dark room in my basement. I taught myself how to do black and white photography, including developing and printing. And I have a whole series of black and white photographs, which again are a demonstration of the fact that art would not die. It just wouldn't go away.
So you practiced until, well, for 10 years. You started in 81 at Doylestown, still practicing in 91.
12, about 12
And
years.
then you got kicked upstairs, right?
Well, I didn't get kicked upstairs by any means. I have to stress that everything that was done because I made a conscious decision to do it. I had the experience one day of being in an examining room with a kid, looking into his ear, which was, something we did 9 million times a day. And I felt myself, I don't know if you guys could see me, but I felt myself begin to sway a little bit. Just very subtle, and nobody else saw it, but I saw it. At that point in time, I was director of the ER, and I walked out of the room and I said, that's it. And that was, I removed myself from from medical practice in the ER and became what's known unpleasantly as a paper doctor, an administrator in charge of quality assurance at Doylestown Hospital. Those couple of years were not pleasant because telling doctors when they should discharge patients or situations about the care, this was not a pleasant part of medicine for me. I like taking care of patients. I liked the excitement of the ER. I liked the blood in the guts. And I didn't like sitting in an office dealing with telephone calls to irate doctors who didn't want to be told how to manage their patients. But the hospital administration had to consider other factors, and that is patients could not stay in the hospital forever. They had to be discharged because Medicare only pays a certain amount of money, blah, blah, blah. So that was my job. It wasn't real pleasant, and after a couple of years, I was really pretty disgusted with it. And so,
But that also occasioned your increasing involvement with art. You became, as you told me, a Sunday painter at that point.
yes, and in 1991, I finally said, I think I'm beginning to have enough of this. And I started painting as a Sunday painter. I did a lot of painting over at the Bromley Lois place on Cuddalowsa Road, where he had a beautiful farm with all sorts of animals and a watermill. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. But in those days, and right now it's empty. Nobody lives there, as far as I know. But at that time, it was just bustling with life. Animals, people, tourists. It was just wonderful. And Bromley used to let me, he used to open the corral, which nobody could enter. He used to let me go in onto his grounds and I would paint onto his grounds. That was my Sunday painting, and I learned a great deal about painting.
So you were still, were you painting with your left hand? Because I think in 91 was when you, um, you met up with an old girlfriend from
Yes,
Woodstock, who sounds like she was pretty pivotal in your development.
yes, there are two components to
Yeah,
this story.
next.
The first component to the story is how did I become an artist? Well, how did I really become an artist? One night I was alone. My family had gone out to dinner. My wife and two boys had gone out to dinner, and I was at home alone. And I was on my deck watching the fireflies and thinking about my life and where it was and where I wanted it to go. And I finally came upon a critical question, which I think was the answer to what I was looking for. The question was, when I'm on my deathbed, what is the one thing that I would most regret not having done in my life? And I thought about this, and the answer came to me from my childhood, because I realized in my childhood my passion was drawing and art, and that's all I really wanted to do. And so I made the connection, and I said to myself at that point in time, you're going to become an artist now. It's now or never, and leave medicine. That was the first part of this transition. Second part, and by the way, that was the night my wife said, okay. Uh, Two little kids, mind you. Uh, as David mentioned, when I was first diagnosed in '83, I didn't just stay with my full-time job in the ER. I began to explore all sorts of part-time work that I could do in an effort for the future to support my family when I became quadriplegic. And so it was really a business situation in my head. There was no emotion involved here. I was thinking, how the heck am I going to continue to fulfill my role as a husband and a father and a provider if I continue to get even worse? So I took a lot of jobs and I worked my butt off nights, weekends, weekdays. Frankly, I don't know how to do it, but I do know that's where my gray hair came from. At that point, the second component of my transition from medicine to art came into being. And that was in the form of the girl you see here, a hippie, a hippie who I picked up on the road in Woodstock, New York in 1969, the year of the Woodstock Festival, and also the year that the first man walked on the moon. So I picked up this girl. Her name, guess what? It was Jan.
She might be on.
What?
She might be on.
Well, she may be. Hi, Jan. And Jan, the first component of my wife saying, yes, go for it, was critical. The second component was equally critical. Jan came to visit our home one day shortly while this was going on, and she brought all of her art supplies. She's an art professor. She's an artist. We were very, very close, and we were actually going to get married way back when. And things just didn't work out, but we remained friends all these years. A wonderful friend of mine. an extremely accomplished artist and a wonderful professor of art over in Western Pennsylvania. Starts with an L.
Lafayette,
Lancaster?
Lafayette, Lehigh.
No. At any rate, so she taught there many years. At any rate, she came to visit, and she said to me the next morning, okay, let's go out and paint. Because she was aware of everything that was happening, that I was going to leave medicine and all of that. So she took me out into the backyard of my house with some paint supplies, set up my easel and all of that, and then turned to me and said, Jan, take off your eyeglasses. And Jan, pick up the brush with your left hand. My right arm was shot at that point. Pick up the brush with your left hand. Folks, to this day, I have to ask my wife to sign checks because my signature is pretty horrendous. But she told me to do that, and I did it. And I painted the painting, which I still have, and I put it aside. And Jan left at some point. And about a week later, I was passing by, and this painting was just sitting there. And I looked at it and I said, that's not half bad. And so I decided to really make an attempt and started to teach myself how to paint. I never had a lesson in my life. I'm a self-taught artist.
Next.
Okay, so what happened next? What happened next was I thought the only way to paint was plein air painting. I'm so ignorant. That's what I thought you did. So that's what I did. So here you see a couple of photographs of me painting in Lambertville at right across the street from Finkel's. And I went on to the lot and spoke with one of the workmen and said to him, when do you think the train will be running along this track? Because I need to know where to set up. And I really want to set up on the railroad track because the view of the Coryell Pork Yard is the best for me. And he said to me, well, you never can tell.
All right.
With that in mind, I said, the hell with it, and asked them to lift me up into the middle of the track, which they did. And I proceeded to paint the Finkel, the pork yard area.
So this was in 92. You're still in this period. It's 93 when you quit the medical practice and are fully committed to making a career as an artist.
That is correct.
And you take what, the next 10 years without really showing your work, but just working at it?
That's correct. It's correct, Michael and David. In 1993, I walked out of the hospital for the last time, or rolled out, whichever you prefer. I couldn't believe the way the air smelled. I've been smelling hospitals for 25 years, and I was like, that's the way things smell. When I got outside, I can't believe how wonderful this
Smell
smells.
of freedom.
And I'm looking at it as if there's life around me. There's green trees. There's not people laying in bed dying and suffering. It was quite an epiphany and a wonderful one. So I left the hospital, and that was the last time in 1993 that I was involved in medicine, and at that point became a professional artist. But before I did that, I had to spend 10 years teaching myself how to paint, how to paint, which I didn't know, and two, how to paint with my left arm, which was totally shot.
And while you were doing,
With my left arm, which was my non-dominant arm. So, and very, very clumsy.
so next. So while you're doing that, and I remember this, although we were not really in touch for about 10 years, you were writing this piece for the New Hope Gazette.
No,
Was this
actually,
for the Gazette?
this is for the Bucks County Herald, which Bridget Wingert
Oh, I
left the
thought,
New Hope Gazette, and she began this painting, the Bucks County Herald,
okay.
which everybody's familiar with now. I was there when it began. And Bridget asked me if I would be willing to write. And I said, well, as long as I can write a column about art, I'd be more than pleased to do so. And so what developed was every week for 8 to 9 years, every week I wrote an article about art, all kinds of art, varying from opera to what the Aborigine art was in Australia to found manuscripts of music from the Nazi era, all kinds of things. I wrote about cruise ship auctions and
I didn't.
the tremendous scams that they
I
perpetrate.
think I got scammed, actually. Yeah.
My parents did too, don't feel bad. But at any rate, so
So
these articles,
you're doing this for years, but you're also painting, and you're painting seriously for 10 years. And then what happens?
yes,
Uh,
David is correct.
Sharon,
I
next.
painted in the morning, one morning, until about 1 o'clock. And then in the afternoon, I would write these articles, which were a tremendous art education for me. And my mission was to have the community see art, love art, live art as much as me. I wanted to bring art to the community. And from the feedback I got, it was a rather successful endeavor because people did learn a great deal about art and there were questions, and it was a very stimulating event.
All
At
right.
any rate,
But
after
now
that,
we are, and we got to move a little bit.
okay,
You are about to explode on the scene. You have been in relative obscurity for 10 years.
right.
And then you, what, get introduced to Gratz? How did you get to Paul Gratz?
Once again, my rod and my staff, I was doing I don't know what, and my wife, without my knowledge, took my portfolio down to Paul Gratz in New Hope. Paul liked my work. He decided to take me on. At that time, I was with Joseph Crilly, the only two living artists that Paul represented. And I continued with Paul for many years. I had 10 solo shows at the Gratz Gallery, 40 to 50 paintings each year, and most of the shows were sellouts, to my amazement. And you can see all the little red dots on the wall, and that was quite typical. The crowds were unbelievable. When I would drive up to enter the gallery, I'd get out of my car and I heard Jan, Jan, Jan. It was quite astonishing to me that all of that was happening. But
After all this time, and all of a sudden you are now a celebrated artist. It's just mind-boggling, right? So, okay, you're with Gratz next, Sharon. And you're at home, you've developed your atelier, and you have been very successful. And then after 10 years with Gratz, you decide enough, or
yes, I think after 10 years with Gratz, I think I've had enough of that, and I wanted to simply paint without hustling, trying to sell my work, dealing with gallery owners, dealing with all of that business aspect of art, and I just didn't want to do that anymore. I just wanted to paint.
Okay, so this is your studio, your atelier. We're going to now go into the art, showing your art, your landscapes, your still life, and your portraits with some reasonable dispatch. But let's start just by asking you what attracts you to something that you want to paint it, and then what's the process?
I think that's a great question, David. I am never interested in doing an image because of the emotion it evokes in me or some intellectual idea. Those are never my motivations. My motivations are simply the formal elements of painting. It's the line, the color, the light, the values, the composition. These are the things that drew me to a particular scene. And if emotion evolved out of that fascination and my pleasure and joy and passion in painting the scene, so be it. Great. I'm happy. I think this painting may be an example of that because it really shows my love of New Hope. And it's a very interesting painting, which I would discuss in more detail if I had my pointer and we had a larger image, but I can talk about a little bit or not.
Well, you just said you talked about why you paint something. Is there a process that is pretty much a repeated process, how you build up a painting and how these different elements or values, as you call it, come into play?
Yes. Well, it almost sounds mundane, but I'll take a board or a canvas and I'll prep it with gesso, which is an acrylic-based, very, very hard substance that's great for a ground for painting. And after that, I will use an underpainting, which is usually a neutral tone. And I can't draw. I cannot draw. I just don't have the facility with my non-dominant arm. So in order to begin some of these paintings, I always draw the horizon line first. Even if you can't see it, I imagine where it is and I know where it is. And it's important to me to know that. You may have noticed, and well, you'll notice, I like high horizons very much, but not always, but I do. And so I begin with the horizon, a line across the canvas that indicates the horizon. In this case, I can't point it out to you, but the the what you're seeing here is very dramatic diagonal lines going down into the center of the pane. They're stopped, and then there's a horizontal line going off to the right. And this is tension encountering stability, if you wish to put it into intellectual terms. The type of situation I love so much with the high horizons is that there's so much stuff underneath the town, and the town itself is much smaller above the horizon line. Reflections in the water, one of my favorite things to do. I think they have a nice glow to them. I think that I have captured the materiality of the objects in the painting. Again, you can't see close up because I can't enlarge it, but the stones and the ironwork and the water and the foliage and the bricks in the little building at the other end, the materiality of those objects and the texture of them is very important to me and is a very important part of my painting.
Next.
By the way, if anybody has any questions, please don't tell me, do not hesitate to tell me to shut up and ask your question. I don't mind being interrupted.
Well, we're going to do it at the end.
Okay, fine.
So this is a
Now this painting,
companion piece?
this is a companion piece to Summer New Hope. What is it? Winter Lambertville. So this is kind of interesting, isn't it? I've lived here now. I'm a New Yorker. I've lived here now over 40 years, 40 plus years. Someday I'll be considered a native, maybe 40 or 50 years after I pass. I don't know. But at any rate, despite my short time here of 40 years, I developed a feeling for each town and a love for each town. And I believe that these paintings show that love. The Summer New Hope is a very warm painting. The Winter Lambertville is a very cold painting. The painting is, by the way, I found a tiny spot at the end of Ferry Street in New Hope that I went around the fence. So I had help setting up, and I set up and I painted this scene. And this is a love tribute to Lambertville, and it's an ice cold painting. The hues, the colors, pigments of blues and grays, I think reinforce that feeling. The beautiful glow of light over the town of Lambertville is kind of an expression of warmth and affection for Lambertville. I can't see it from my angle, but the painting itself, the town of Lambertville is actually framed by two wild trees, which makes me say that nature is the greatest painter of all. And again, the textures, the colors, the lines, the composition, the feeling of cold, these things I think make the painting somewhat successful. And for those who are interested, and even for those who are not interested, this painting holds a record of the highest selling painting at Phillips Mill ever. So I just wanted to add that.
As well you should. Okay, next. So there's another gorgeous landscape.
This landscape is a painting, I'm sure many of you recognize Lewis Island. You wouldn't recognize it now because it's quite different. But in those days, it was quite beautiful. The skull of Delaware used to keep their skulls there next to the boathouse. You can see the horizon line on the far shore. That's New Hope. And then there's the river. And then there's this little tiny island, the Lewis Island. What shall I say about it? This painting is an explosion of autumnal hues, and it is carefully designed. You notice the very, very diagonal line going across the painting from left to right, or right to left, depending upon your perspective. The foliage there, that the shore of the water, that diagonal line, and that is balanced by the trees, some of which are vertical and some of which are curved. But what they do is they serve to stop the painting from running off the edge of the canvas, and they provide a stability and a balance to the whole. And let's see, what else can I say about this? And I've painted this scene perhaps 20 times, various times of day, various seasons. Just was in love with it. Unfortunately, it's been flooded so many times, and at the last time they gave up. And now all you'll see is kind of a little shell of a boathouse with nothing around it. And it's not a very pleasant thing to look at. Someday somebody will come and put a McMansion on it and beef it up again, I suppose. But
You captured it in its glory, right?
in its glory, I think. I'm not sure you'll ever see the heyday again, but
Nice.
nice. Excuse me. Excuse me. And this painting Again, I think is which is a good painting. This painting is very, very carefully designed. And this painting is a painting of New Hope, expressing my love for New Hope. But the subject of the painting is not New Hope. The subject of the painting are the two scholars in the bottom. They're really the center of the whole thing. And why? This is because sculling, I think, is very much symbolic of the activities and pleasures that can be found in these twin towns and on this river. So sculling for me is a wonderful thing to watch. And I think the scholars, if I could enlarge them and you could see them better, came out quite successfully.
Beautiful.
Now the light blue water on the bottom, which if you look at the river, you'll see it. You'll see it. It's not just blue. You'll see this division. The huge green foliage above that light blue, what is that? This is nature, massive nature dwarfing man. I'm putting some intellectual meaning on this painting, which was not in my head when I did it. The other thing is, with all the darkness of the greenery, you see these bright lines, and the bright lines are quite intentional, and they play a little game of leading your eye all around and through the painting. I guess that's, oh, this painting was shown at the Missioner some years ago in one exhibition. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
Next.
So, oh, I love this too. So where was this? This is in your travels?
In my travels, this is one of my 10 trips, well, actually, many, many trips to France.
You look very French there.
Pardon me?
You look very French.
Do it?
Yeah, yeah, you beret. Very nice.
That beret was bought at a market in France in my first year of going to France. And I've never given it up, and I wear it to this day. It's been beat up, and my wife said, "Oh, that looks terrible." I took it outside, I hosed it down, I left it out in the sun for a few days, and I brought it back in and said, "Now it's perfect
It's
again."
even better. Yeah.
At any rate, we typically my wife and I would be in France for 6 weeks at a time, and I would rent a house in the country, always in the country, one of the provinces, and we always went to a different province every year. One year we rented a place in Normandy, and we travel. What we typically did when we rented a house was put a big map up on the wall, and along with my a Guide Bleu, which is the French guidebook that has all the secrets that the French know about, and Fyodor's does not, or Fodor's, whatever the hell it is, told me about a bunch of places that I would not have known about. And one of them was the Palace Benedictine, which is in the town straight up from this town, called a little town called Fécamp. And the Benedictine Palace is one of the most extraordinary places I've ever been. If you want to have your mind blown without taking drugs, go there. It's unbelievable. Anyway, the town down, which I discovered first, this is Etretat. Etretat is famous for this rock formation that you see in the background. And the painting is really my astonishment at finding this place. This place was painted by Monet umpteen times. And not only Monet, but every artist in the world who ever existed has painted this scene. Well, it was finally my chance. So I got a chance to paint it. And I made tremendous effort to show the texture of the rock and the subtleties of the, again, it has to be enlarged for you to really see this. but the colors in the water and the colors in the sky were there. But I have a tendency in my painting to push color so that if it's kind of a pale, uninteresting blue, I will push that with by mixing paint to make it a little bit more dramatic. And you can see some of that in the sky, maybe a little bit in the water. The brush strokes are quite alive, quite dynamic. And
Beauty.
I don't know what to say about this except
No,
I
no.
absolutely adore Normandy. I adore it.
And now you have joined the greats in their treatment of Etretat.
I don't think mine is going to be shown up there with Monet,
That's
but
pretty damn good, I think. Next. So now, oh, here's one more sort of landscape, and I think it also highlights what you just said about how you find colors and bring drama to the representation.
many years ago when I could still walk, uh, we used to go to the shore, and one of my fondest memories is walking in the surf just as dawn was breaking, feeling the wet sand and water in between my toes, looking towards the shore where little lights were beginning to come on, hearing the sea, smelling it. This was such an ecstatic experience for me. I never forgot it. Unfortunately, with my disease, I have not been able to walk on the surf for 40 years. And that's just the way it is. I went with a couple of friends to Stone Harbor one summer, and amazingly, they had, I think they were called Moby mats. They're thick rubber mats, and they lay them straight out onto the sand. And that way, a wheelchair can go onto the sand because, in case you don't know it, wheelchairs can't handle sand or ice or mud or soft surfaces like that. But with these Moby mats, I was able to get out onto the beach. The surf was coming up, so it was pretty close. So we were just sitting right here where my signature is on the lower left, and these cloud formations were there. And I just was stunned by these beautiful cloud formations. And they immediately called to mind a painting that I had seen in 1980, my first trip in France. And that was at the Musée d'Orsay, where I saw a magnificent painting by Paul Signac, which you can see perhaps in the
Yeah. Oh,
insert.
yeah.
That painting made an impression on me 45 years ago, which I have never forgotten. It was definitely part of the stimulus that went into painting this. The fantastic explosion of clouds above a terra rosa sky, I think, is rather dramatic. You can, at least I can feel the sands on my feet as I walk in it. And what we're seeing here, I believe, is an exploration of the infinity of sky and sea. And, folks, I'm giving you some intellectual expressions of what some of the effects of these paintings may be on people, and a little bit on me. But I don't want you to think I went into this preconceived idea of what I was going to do and what I was trying to express feeling wise. Again, it was the technical aspects of the painting that enthralled me and made me paint this piece.
It's a great distinction that you're sort of building it up formalistically, even if it looks in the end like it's this powerful expression of emotion in nature. So it's remarkable. Next.
You pinpointed it.
So now we're going to do, then you got into still lifes, a little sort of transitioning, not out of landscape, but including still lives as a real focus for you.
I think artists who continue to paint the same pot boilers year after year after year must be the most bored people on earth. But at any rate, I don't do that. And so what'll happen, even though I painted landscapes for a long time, uh, they kept selling and I needed more. I needed more. I needed more.
This is what happens to artists, isn't it? You get bent by commercial interests.
Exactly. But at any rate, I then decided, okay, I'm going to do a series of still lifes. And these still lifes have one objection. One object, excuse me, one object. I hope it's not an objection. Object, value. That is the darkness and the lightness of objects, which is so critical in painting, in my uneducated opinion. If you get your values correctly, color is simple. It just follows the values automatically. That's my opinion. That's been my experience. This painting, which is small painting, all of my still lifes here are small paintings because it's a big series. And they're all done on board. They're all oils. I'm just an oil painter. I don't paint in anything but oil. And this is an interesting painting. There are two people here. Just want to, if you can see this, I just want to, I wonder if any of you,
You want me to
if any of you can possibly
identify who they are,
identify
as I did?
something here in that painting. We've got a Don Quixote and we've got a Sancho Panza. Not my thoughts initially when I began painting, but subsequently in thinking about
Do
it.
the next.
The materiality of these objects is what just totally blew me away. The glass, the ceramic, the cord around the bottle, these things just blew me away, and I really wanted to explore them. Where are we going?
We are going, because we're running over. So we're going through these still lives, but I want you to talk about this Morandi-like work also.
Okay, again, without enlargement, I can't really show you everything that I was after in this painting, but this painting, if there's light on it and it was enlarged more, you would see an extraordinary exploration of each color in each object. And the urn all the way to the right is from Ukraine, was inherited from my grandfather who came from Ukraine, and appears in some of my paintings. The thing that also was so important to me here was the interspace between the objects. So those shapes that you see in between the objects are almost as important as the objects themselves. And if you're thinking that I might owe a little bit of a debt to Giorgio Morandi, you're correct. However, I would never put my name anywhere near his. He was a genius.
Pretty good.
But the idea of trying to do a little bit of what he was doing is there.
That's beautiful. And it also, again, highlights your discussion of getting the values right, and then the color flows. But if you don't get the light and dark,
Exactly correct. Yes.
okay, next. So you have started over the last few years with portraits. I mean, I think you've done them from time to time, but you've made much more of an effort the last couple of years, right?
Yes, that's correct, David. In 2000, I did this portrait of my mother,
Love that.
which was actually fairly accurate for her. The light is dramatic. She emerges from the obscurity of the past, from the dark. And this was a very dramatic woman. She 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 wasn't shy. She had a lot of friends, and she was very, very sociable and gregarious, unlike me. And This painting, by the way, also you will see one of my favorite colors, which is the cobalt green, right next to her right shoulder. Notice her lipstick and her blouse, they're both red, which lends a little bit of continuity throughout the painting. And
Beautiful.
not too much else to say about it. More portraits. The portrait on your left is, I think, one of my better paintings.
Oh, I love this.
This
Here
painting-
in Jan's house. If anybody wants to come over, I'm going to invite them, Jan.
I found a wall that was big enough for it. It's a 60 by 40, which is one of the large, or 50 by 40, which is one of the larger paintings I've done. This is a theme I have painted many times in my life, and the theme is sisters. I showed David a small pencil drawing that I did back in 71 of my grandmother on the left and my great aunt Ida on the right. And I have been obsessed with the theme of sisters and painted them many times. This painting, again, you look at it technically, the figures are almost monumental. And you've got this very, very geometric, sharp piano in the background, and then you've got the soft, lovely hues and gentleness of the dresses and their faces. The colors, again, my favorite colors, a motif I've used again and again and again and again. The Terra Rosa on the left, cobalt green on the right, and they also are expressive of the personalities of those individuals, because my grandma happened to be a harder woman. And my Tante Ida was just the most gentle, lovely woman in the world. I, like many of you, have deep, deep, deep regrets that I did not engage in personal conversations with these people at that time. But when you're young,
you've been engaging with them as an artist for years.
yes,
and probably having conversations, even though they're out of your own mind.
yes. And you'll find many paintings of my Tante Ida back.
Yeah, behind us. So who's here on the
The
right?
gal on the right, this is, I call this painting The Reader. It's actually a painting of my daughter-in-law done in 2011 when I first met her. When I first met her, I gave her a book. The book is a magnificent book called Photographs for the Tsar. And it's color photographs taken all across Russia before the revolution. It's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it. I gave it to her because she's of Russian heritage, and she was entranced by the book. This is all nice story to tell you, but again, it was the design, it was the color, it was the lighting, it was the delicacy of the subject matter, and all of that went into the initial painting. And it wasn't, oh, I love my daughter-in-law, I'm going to do this. Nothing like that. It was really quite technical, and as David said, I really think if you concentrate on the technical, and technical is a terrible word. I don't like the word, but if you the formal elements of painting, if you concentrate on that, your feeling will come out of it. Your feeling will come.
Love that. Next.
An interesting story. I was invited by a friend to have to meet the Comtesse de Loisy, who lived in Louis Saint-Georges in Bourgogne, in the center of France, the great wine region. To me, one of the best wine regions. And the Comtesse was a true Comtesse, and when I met her, I think she was about 10 feet tall, and she weighed, and she was 95 years old. And I came out of the car and I greeted her, and it was lovely. It was just lovely. So we proceeded into her mansion, and on the top, she is lecturing me about. She's giving me a degustation, and she's lecturing me all about what makes wine growing and the wines of Bourgogne so wonderful. And she talks about things like climate and terroir and the soil and the rainfall and all of these elements that go into making a particular area a very unique ecosystem that produces a very special wine unique to that region. And there are many such regions, even in Bourgogne. And each one gets an appellation if it's approved by the powers that be of the Uniphiles in the French, whatever, heaven, wherever they are. It gets an appellation, and it's considered a superior wine. And she taught me a lot about winemaking in Bourgogne. And then we had dinner where I was instructed to keep my hands on the table. You know, my right hand is not pretty, so I always keep it in my lap when I'm at the table and I eat with my left. And she instructed me, she said, you know, Monsieur, in France, we always instruct our children that they must keep both hands on the table.
She made no allowance?
No allowance. And I said, oh, I apologize. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. And she said, well, the reason for that was in the olden days, you never knew who had a pistol under the table. So we wanted to see both hands. That was the reason originally for this custom, which she acquainted me.
And she seems pretty demanding. Did she ever see the painting you did of her?
I did send her a copy of it, yes. Unfortunately, she died last year, but she did receive a copy of the painting. And so she knew that I had. I would have sent her the original, except I had no idea what was going to happen when she passed away, you know. So
well, she saw it. Sharon, next. I think these are the last.
These are the last ones we're looking at. You'll all breathe a sigh of relief, I'm sure. On the left is a magnificent woman who is my great-grandmother.
She looks magnificent.
This was about 1905 in Vienna, Austria. My great-grandmother operated a guest house and a beer garden. I have a wonderful photograph of David has seen, surrounded by Austrian-Hungarian regiment. She's in the middle. They're all drinking huge steins of beer. And I think to myself, as I look at these faces, these guys are all about to die in World War I. But at any rate, she operated this, despite the virulent anti-Semitism in Vienna in those days. And who knows about today? I haven't been there recently and don't intend to go. But despite that, she operated a successful business. She had a great clientele, and she raised 4 children. Her husband left. Don't know the circumstances. I think she had a boyfriend who's in the picture that David saw, but I'm not sure. But all 4 kids were with her in the beer garden, and to your right is one of those kids who I've painted many times as well. I painted him as a child, and I painted him as an old man. And then the painting that you're seeing right there, 30 by 20 painting, which I did recently, was my great uncle Rudy. In much later years, when we all lived in the Bronx, the whole family had escaped the Nazis and unfortunately left in time and came out here and settled on the Grand Concourse, which used to be called the Champs-Élysées of the Bronx. Now I'm not so sure. But in those days, they lived in the Grand Concourse, all these Art Deco buildings, which are beautiful. I was telling David something that he wasn't aware of, that this is Poe Park, which is a tiny little park right near Alexander's, where Alexander's just used to be, and the Loew's Paradise Theater. And this little park has the house that Edgar Allan Poe lived in while he wrote for many years. Totally obscure, run down, nobody paid attention. It was recently renovated, which I have yet to see, and it may be very, very nice. I don't know. But this was Poe Park, and so my great uncle, who by the way was deaf, like I'm practically there. He was the good humor man there, and the thing that started me off on this painting was his change belt.
That's great. Love it.
So
Rudy, the good humor man.
good humor man.
Okay. I think, this is a painting that I love and I happen to own. And it was really my reconnection back with Jan, who shared with me after I acquired it that it was the first painting, or one of the first paintings that he painted where he felt he could paint freely with his unnatural hand. So it was very meaningful. And I wrote, since we're over time, if you indulge me, this is the poem I wrote about Jan and this painting, called Lambertville Mist. I lost the use of my right hand, prized facility, and slipped in sorrow from its grasp to disability. What choice had I but use my left, the novice of the pair, and press the practice of my craft, repeated as a prayer. And so I dreamed the bridge ahead, old pains that would resist, gone with each stroke freely struck through the Lambertville mist.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Jan.
That
You've been a real
far surpasses the painting.
No, but you've been some inspiration. I'm sorry this ran so long, and Sharon made heroic efforts to get us back on track, but we do have some time for questions
Let me
if
get a
anybody
question.
has for Jan.
I do.
David,
I have a question. First of all, your artwork is spectacular. And I cannot get over that you are self-taught. It's so amazing. And actually, I also paint using oil paint and only began about 20 years ago as an adult. And I'm having fun with it, lots of fun. And I'm a realist painter. Um, anyway, the question is, when you do your landscape work and you're doing plein air, do you photograph your scene and use that as a reference when you go back inside, or are you painting the entire piece outside in several settings, I would imagine?
Very, very nice question. Thank you for asking that. I'll simply say, just as a preliminary, the camera is a very special instrument to me and has been for most of my life. I always felt the camera was the one object in the world that could stop time, and nothing else could do that, but a camera could do that. I always felt I had that in my head. I loved cameras. I loved photography. So your question, yes, when I'm painting plein air, I pretty much will at least do the first run through of the painting. If not, if the light is right, I can stay longer and do more of the painting. But as you know, in plein air painting, the light changes like that.
Yeah,
You start out with one painting and you're looking at another painting at the end of the day. So,
right.
you can't always do the whole painting outdoors. At least I didn't find a way to do that. So yes, I always would take a photograph of the scene because I would have it for reference to complete the work in the studio. And that's kind of how I did it.
Yeah, I was wondering because I have tried doing plein air and it's very frustrating for me because the light is constantly changing. So without a photograph, you're kind of sunk.
Two things. You got to work fast
Right.
and you got to take pictures.
But you're a meticulous painter. I can see. I mean, your detail is so phenomenal.
I
You
wish it
can't possibly,
wasn't.
huh?
I almost wish it wasn't. I wish sometimes I can't help it. It's sort of like the frog and the scorpion, and the scorpion says to the frog one day, "I want to get across the lake. Could you please give me a ride?" And the frog looks at him and says, "Are you crazy? If I put you on my back, you're going to sting me." And the scorpion said, "No, why would I do that? That's ridiculous. I just want to cross this stream." So the frog says, "Well, okay." So he takes the scorpion on his back. They go across the stream, and all of a sudden, the frog feels this sharp pain in his back. And he turns his head and he says, "Mr. Scorpion, you just stung me. Now we will both sink. Why did you do that?" And the scorpion turned to him and said, "I couldn't help it. It's in my nature."
Mhm. Yeah, there you go. One other question, can I? As a physician, you had plenty of exposure to anatomy. Did that influence your portraiture work at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've always been drawing figures, even before I studied anatomy.
Yeah.
I seem to, even in my doodles, you can see proportions are correct, and it's interesting. I don't
Yeah.
know where that came from, but anatomy certainly reinforced it. And then I bought, I forgot the gentleman's name, starts with an H, I believe, Artistic Anatomy, which is a fine book. And I also did a little anatomy drawing when I was in Woodstock with my girlfriend in '69. We had a teacher who there's one figure drawing class that I took, and he would talk about anatomy as we did this course. That was my only art course. I didn't get anything out of it really, but the guy would come in the morning stinking of beer. He'd rush around from easel to easel and say, "Oh, that's not bad," and go on to the next one. That was my art education.
Well, you are amazing. I feel enlightened. I had not heard of you, so I'm so glad I was able to be here. Yeah.
Thank you for what you said. It makes me very uncomfortable when somebody says you're amazing, you're great. I really appreciate your saying that. I don't know how to deal with it though, because I don't think that.
Well, just say thank you. And you're great.
Somebody said, learn to accept compliments graciously. Thank you.
There you go.
Anybody else in this extended period? Well, thanks everybody for being here, and Jan, thanks for the work
Yeah.
and for your time.
And thank you, David, for being my friend and being such a lovely poet, and for your friendship is very, very important to me.
Thanks.
No, thank you so much.
And I will
Yeah.
look for that painting the next time I'm at your house, David.
Definitely.
By the way, we all owe a great deal of thanks to Sharon, who's sitting over here
Right.
in obscurity and who has been commanding everything that you've been
Right.
seeing.
And really provided emergency relief when the ship went down.
Right. Thanks, Sharon.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you,
so
everybody.
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Stop recording.